distant surprise, they met the way so many modern love stories begin by accident, through a glowing screen, at a time when both of them were not looking for anything at all. Amina lived where the sun rose early and nights came softly, wrapped in the sound of distant traffic and morning calls to prayer. Daniel lived where the evenings stretched long, where rain tapped against his window and the city lights blinked awake just as her day was ending. Their worlds were separated by oceans, borders, and a 7-hour time difference, but brought together by a single video call that neither of them expected to change their lives. The first call was awkward. Their smiles were polite, their words careful. Amina adjusted her headscarf nervously, glancing at her own reflection in the corner of the screen. Daniel cleared his throat too many times, laughing at jokes that weren't fully jokes yet. They spoke about simple things: work, favorite foods, music they listened to while cooking or walking home. When the call ended, neither of them said what they were thinking. That felt different. They didn't call the next day, or the day after that. But 3 days later, a message appeared. "Are you free to talk tonight?" Or, "I guess it's morning for you." From that moment on, time became something they learned to negotiate gently, like a fragile thing that could break if handled carelessly. Amina learned that Daniel's nights were her mornings. She started waking up earlier, slipping quietly out of bed so she wouldn't wake her family, wrapping herself in a sweater while the sky outside was still pale. Daniel learned to stay awake longer, fighting sleep with coffee and soft music so he wouldn't miss her smile. They joked about it at first. "Love shouldn't require math," Amina teased once, squinting at a world clock app. "But here we are," Daniel replied, smiling, "solving equations just to say good morning." Their video calls became a rhythm, not constant but consistent, a steady presence in each other's lives. They learned each other through details. Daniel learned that Amina always tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, that she loved old romantic movies but pretended not to, that she hummed softly when she was thinking. Amina learned that Daniel talked with his hands, even when no one could see them, that he always leaned closer to the camera when something mattered, that he looked away and smiled before saying something honest. They watched movies together over Zoom, counting down before pressing play at the same time. 3, 2, 1, play. Sometimes the connection lagged. Sometimes the movie froze at the worst moment. Sometimes one of them fell asleep halfway through. But it didn't matter. What mattered was knowing that somewhere else in the world, someone was watching the same scene, laughing at the same line, feeling the same emotions at the same time. They celebrated small milestones. 1 month, 3 months, 6. There were no grand dates, no shared meals at real tables. Instead, there were virtual dinners, Amina propping her phone against a glass while Daniel ate takeout on his couch. There were birthdays celebrated with screen-shared playlists and candles blown out miles apart. There were hard days too, days when the distance felt heavier than usual, when one of them had a bad day and the other couldn't offer a hug, only words, only presence, only patience. "I wish I could just sit next to you," Amina whispered once, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Daniel nodded, swallowing. "I know, but one day, the screen won't be between us." That sentence became their promise. One day, they talked about the first meeting carefully, like something sacred, where it would be, what they would do, whether they would hug immediately or stand there awkwardly, unsure how to translate digital closeness into physical reality. "What if it's weird?" Amina asked one night. Daniel smiled gently. "Then we'll laugh about it. Together." They started a countdown, not officially at first, just jokes. "Only 200 days left," Daniel said casually one evening. Amina laughed. "You're counting?" "Of course I am." Soon, the countdown became real. A date circled on both their calendars. Flights booked, passports checked again and again, as if the details might disappear if they didn't look often enough. The final weeks were the hardest. Every call felt heavier, charged with anticipation. Every goodbye felt longer. What if something goes wrong? Amina asked quietly, the night before Daniel's flight. Daniel reached toward the screen, as if he could touch her hand. It won't, and if it does, we'll face it the same way we faced everything else. Together. The day arrived wrapped in nerves and disbelief. Amina stood at the airport, heart pounding, hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her bag strap. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but imagination hadn't prepared her for how real it felt. Daniel stepped through the arrival's gate slowly, scanning faces. Tired, nervous, hopeful. Their eyes met. For a second, time stopped. No screen, no lag, no countdown, just them. Amina covered her mouth, tears spilling before she could stop them. Daniel dropped his bag, walking toward her as if pulled by something stronger than thought. They didn't speak. They hugged. Not the polite kind, not the careful kind, but the kind that says you're real, you're here, you're mine. Amina felt his heartbeat. Daniel felt her trembling. Months of longing collapsed into that single moment. You're taller. Amina laughed through tears. Daniel smiled, his own eyes wet. You're exactly the same. They pulled back, just enough to look at each other properly, to memorize details that no camera had ever captured fully: the warmth, the presence, the quiet certainty. Around them, the airport buzzed with movement, people passing, announcements echoing. But for them, the world narrowed. All those nights, all those time zones, all those shared movies, countdowns, and whispered promises. They had led here. Later, as they walked side by side, Daniel reached for Amina's hand, not asking, just hoping. She intertwined her fingers with his. And for the first time, they didn't have to count hours or calculate time zones or say goodbye through a screen. The long distance had been their story. But this was their beginning.